We are. I see us. All right, guys.
Awesome.
We are here with my man, Casey Sutton. And as we had some technical difficulties, as per that's how things go in life. We are here now, though. Okay. So we're live finally, 15 minutes later, but hey, we're here. So,
How's it
yes,
going?
yes, thank you. Thank you guys for coming to Bearded Darkness Book Reviews. And I just want to start with some introductions. This is Casey Sutton. He's a self-pub author of the extremely beautiful Malfus Necromancer Unchained. He's a self-pub author, and he is marketing like a marketing genius. He is always on TikTok. He is on YouTube. He's always doing something. He's a very dedicated man.
Thank you. Yeah, as a self-published author, you kind of have to be one of those one-man bands doing everything yourself and trying to figure it out as you go.
Well, I can see it, and it's gonna pay off for you because, buddy, you put in some work. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to go over was that this is gonna be a non-spoiler. So if you guys haven't read it, you're not gonna ruin anything as far as the book goes. We're just kind of here to relax and have fun and talk books, talk his book mostly, and if we get off on some other topics, that's fun too. So I'm going to start with my first question, and that would be, how is writing as a self-pub author and the hard work that goes into that, how did your military service, and thank you for your service, by the way, that's something that I hold very honorable in my life. Everybody in my family, and when I say everybody, I mean all my uncles, my father, my grandfathers, and I also tried to go into the Air Force, but things happen in life, and I just wanted you to know that I hold that very honorable. But what did that do for you as far as the gained skills that you acquired to work as hard as you do towards getting your book out there and writing the book in all aspects? Go on that topic wherever you'd like to.
All right. Yeah. So definitely a lot of the like discipline and determination, I think came from that, and just kind of the work ethic. I feel like you have to write every day, not necessarily every day, but I feel like you have to be working at it every day, and that's not always necessarily word count and sitting away at the keyboard. Sometimes that can just be sitting there, thinking about your book, outlining in your head, or writing down a few things in notes. But as long as you're working towards it every day, I feel like there's no, it's definitely a marathon. There's no great strides and, getting 2,000 words a day, trying to push yourself or something crazy. So anyways, I think some determination came from that. And then someone actually asked me a really good question the other day, and they said some of the combat scenes in Malthus are very, very realistic, and like kind of, somebody even used the word kind of like cinematographic, like a video or movie kind of bring you right in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so my friend asked me a really good question about it, and I realized yesterday I kind of came up with a perfect answer for this. So I think that some of the ways that I do that, and some of my time in the military that came over, from being in combat over there and stuff like that, is, and a lot of people write combat scenes, they focus on like the big grandiose parts of it. But I feel like it's really like the little details, like remembering if, something's stuck in your boot, or, whether or not you ate that day. Like those are the kind of like little things that you remember and think about sometimes. And yeah, so that's my answer there.
So just from reading, and I'm almost done with the book, guys. So what I've read so far is brilliant, and that's not something that just comes out of my mouth. That's something that I've read, and I hold this book very dear to me
Thanks,
already.
man.
It's yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. This gentleman here actually hand delivered this signed hardcover to me, and man, that's important when you're nobody really. Here on YouTube, I had like 20 subscribers. I still don't have a bunch, but at the same time, this gentleman here brought me and thought enough of his own work to market it that way. So, but when I read the action parts or the action scenes, sorry, the small details and that I wouldn't have thought of being a civilian, I wouldn't have thought of because experience is being read when I read this book. So when I hear the little details as you just put out, it gives somebody the idea that you know what you're talking about, and it's not something that would have just sparked in my mind as somebody who hasn't seen combat. So I can definitely translate what you said to what I've read.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I definitely wanted to talk about this too. I was so excited to talk about how many books you plan to be in the damned. I'm so sorry, my throat was hurting there. The Damned and the Dead series. I find myself wanting this not to stop, so I guess that was just a natural question. So have you thought much about it for the future?
Yeah. So book one is finished, and then I'll talk some more about it at the end. But there's a prequel short story called "Greedy as a Ghoul" that takes place like basically a year before the novel starts, and it's a standalone story. So for one, I'm kind of working on some other short stories that lead up to when book one starts. So that is, something kind of separate, but I guess that counts as a book too. But moving
Absolutely.
forward, I'm working on book two now, and I know where that ends, and I'm about halfway through, about done outlining, like to the halfway point, but I still have the last half to get to, even though I know where it ends at. But I think that it's actually going to, I know a lot of people write trilogies, but I think it's actually going to be 4 books for me. So I think, book one just came out, and I think there's going to be, 2 I'm working on, and then 2 more after that, at least, hopefully.
That excites me for sure. So you would consider yourself, just from what you said, what they call a pantser. You kind of like to make sure that you've got your outline and you know where you're going before you get there, kind of deal.
Yeah, so I actually did a video on this, and I think that people get too much in one camp or the other, and I think it's a little bit of both. Like I'm probably 75% plotter, 25% pantser. I do like to try to outline as much as I can, but sometimes if I'm stuck, I don't necessarily wait, and I'll start kind of writing something, and maybe I'll come up with an idea that'll fix it, or maybe I'll just have to scrap that and come up with something else. But, actually, so it's kind of interesting too with my story. So Malthus had a kind of interesting start. So I actually just started it out as a writing exercise, actually, and I really wanted to work on flawed characters. And yes, I really wanted to work on flawed characters, and that was like the one of the focuses for writing Malthus. And so it was just kind of a writing exercise for me. And I was posting some of these chapters on Royal Road to try to garner an audience. And by the time I was like 7 or 8 chapters in, like the story actually kind of took off on Royal Road and
That's
made it
awesome,
in.
dude.
Yeah, it was cool. It made it into the top 50, and I actually got an audiobook deal from doing that. But
Which
at
is
the same,
awesome. I'm sorry to interrupt
yeah.
you, but that's so good, dude. Like, it's such an awesome audiobook. I have to absolutely plug that in there real quick. But sorry, continue, man. So the top 50 on Royal Road.
Yeah, made it way up there, and then like So as I was writing, like I said, it's kind of a writing exercise to just focus on flawed characters. And so I kind of had a vague outline, but it was more of an idea that I was just working with. So I was really just kind of pantsing and working on a writing exercise at first. And then once it really took off, I realized I had something here and I needed to, take a step back and sit down and kind of plot it out. So I at that point, I had an idea of where I was going, but I took a break there and kind of made sure everything was lined out before I kept going forward there.
That's really cool because just talking about it for the last few minutes, man, that's exciting. And I'm not even the one. Sorry if you guys hear babies in the background. That happens sometimes when you got babies. But that's inspiring when I hear other authors and I can see it in their faces and how they speak of their own work, get excited about how they've become in the story and how they're just excited to tell it. And I can sense that in you and what you're doing. So I respect that. So that kind of leads us
Thank
into
you.
what I wanted to ask next is it's a two-part question. Who inspired you to write, growing up? Who were three people who you said, man, I want to be like that guy? And then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I'll start in chronological order, I think. So,
Okay.
as a kid, I read R.A. Salvatore and like the Drizzt Do'Urden series. I was, big Dungeons and Dragons nerd and video game nerd. I started,
Nothing wrong
you know,
with that.
yeah, started playing Dungeons and Dragons. I got a whole bookshelf of Dungeons and Dragons
Oh, I
books
can see it,
behind
man.
me.
That's beautiful.
But I started playing in sixth grade, and I was usually the dungeon master, so I had to come up with the world and the monsters and all the characters in there. So
I can't
that's
think of a
kind of
better job.
yeah, that's kind of where I probably started, coming up with stories and all that as a writer. But anyways, I read R.A. Salvatore as a kid, and I really loved those like Dungeons and Dragons novels. So that's kind of where I started as a reader, a fantasy reader, and then also where I drew a lot of like wanting a Dungeons and Dragons kind of themed, book myself, kind of drawing on that world a little bit. After that, when I was in the army, I read a lot of Dan Abnett, who wrote a lot of the Warhammer 40K books, especially, and Eisenhorn and Ravenor are two of my favorite series by him. So he's got like a really punchy writing style. I really like I was actually surprised that he was not in the military because some of his military fantasy writing is just fantastic.
So there's like two or three people there who I've instantly added to my TBR because if you don't know, I didn't grow up reading fantasy or even really reading at all. Of course, I could read, but I just didn't didn't
Yeah.
have like the gumption to. I didn't think that I would enjoy it or like really didn't give much thought. And man, I'm telling you, the last couple of years, I really have found the beauty in the art of writing and reading, and I just love it. But R.A. Salvatore is one that I have had on my TBR for a while, and just wanted to reiterate, like it's a little higher now that I know that you've read that and that influenced your writing. So that's great, man.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. I really liked his series, and he had a really good bad guy in the book series too. It was an assassin named Ventrari, and he was I've always kind of, I don't know why, but I've always kind of fixated on the bad guys in stories and movies a lot ever since I was a kid, probably.
There's something glorious, or like maybe because we shouldn't root for the bad guy, that we end up rooting for the bad guy. At least, you know, I feel that way about me when I read like Joe Abercrombie or somebody similar to him. I find myself enjoying the gritty, like kind of, man, why does that guy act that way? He shouldn't. Well, that's probably why he acts that way, and I really am attracted to that type of writing.
Yeah,
And it almost in a way kind of gives you the human condition, because I think that everybody has a little bit of Joe Abercrombie in us, you know.
Yeah.
So I
And
think
that,
that's my little spiel about that. But I love the bad guy, I guess.
yeah, me too. I feel like a story is more believable if it has a good bad guy.
For
And that
sure.
that leads me into my third one is Joe Abercrombie. Yeah, he is awesome, man. He's probably my favorite, one of my favorite writers. It's hard to just pick one, but yeah, I've read all his books. I've listened to audiobooks, Stephen Pacey for all of them, and he's a fantastic writer.
For sure. I understand that there was a incident in your life that highly impacted you writing Greedy as a Ghoul and Malfus, and I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to write, like, I don't know about when I decided, maybe sometime in high school, I had an idea in my head that one day I was going to be a writer and, just would wait till I was ready and read a bunch of books and all that stuff. And, went to join the army and read a lot in the army, thought about it then, and then went to school for psychology and thought about writing then and still never really took the plunge. And got a job. My life kind of fast forwarded, and I was still reading a lot of books on writing, but wasn't actually like sitting down to do it. There was just a part of me that still didn't really feel ready. And then I think it was the end of 2018, I was visiting my girlfriend's family in South Africa. And while I was over there, I had some GERD and had some internal bleeding and woke up, just kind of like throwing up blood. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
not a small issue.
pretty crazy. It was a lot too, and it was Christmas Eve, so we had to get rush me to the hospital. And the first one we went to, they didn't have the right doctor on like call because it was Christmas Eve, so we had to go to another one. And then by then, I had like thrown up so much blood that I was starting to go into shock and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, they luckily the doctor there, it was crazy too. He's like this um, old doctor who, we found out after the surgery, like he's semi-famous, has like videos on YouTube for these crazy surgical procedures and stuff he's done. But
Man,
anyways,
thank God.
I was lucky he was the one there, but he stitched me up. And I still had to sit in ICU for almost like 3 or 4 days, maybe even longer. And I had, the whole time, like a stack of books sitting next to me on, writing and how to start your novel. And I was like, tomorrow isn't promised. I kind of realized then. So I actually started working on my first book that night in the hospital bed.
Man, that's great because that moment of like, shit, I might not be here tomorrow, so these things that I have in my mind that I want to do, I better do them, because
Yeah.
that's what I want as a person, as an individual. Not what I'm supposed to want, not what I'm supposed to do, but when I'm laying on my deathbed, something that I want to tell myself I'm proud that I did, man. So that's not
Yeah.
something that to take lightly, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it definitely, pushed me. And pretty much since then, like I could say almost literally, with the exception of, a handful of months here and there, or week here or there. Some of them may have coincided with the release of Elden Ring, but
No,
take
dude,
it
absolutely.
took a little break from writing, every now and then. But pretty much ever since the end of 2018, I've been writing almost every single day, a little bit.
That's an impressive record, and I hear that making a schedule, like what you said a couple times, it may not even be that you have to stick to 2,000 words per day, that just write something because, at the end of the day, we're all human and that's not always possible. So if you've got a dream, that's one. If you've got a drive and ambition to do something, that's two. And if you chop a little bit of that wood every day, you're going to end up with some firewood. So I
Yeah,
think that
exactly.
that's a great, great system, and it's inspiring as somebody who wants to write.
Yeah, if I could have gone back 10 years in my life, I would have told myself, don't stop reading those books on writing, keep doing that. But at the same time, just start writing, even if it's something you don't want to publish, even if it's something you don't want, you know, to even be associated with, just write a little bit, write about something you saw earlier in the day, just write a little bit of something. And yeah,
Because if you
you'll,
like writing, at least from where don't get me wrong, I haven't written anything close to a novel or anything. But if you like to write, then writing's fun anyway. So even if you're writing about something that influenced you during the day, or a paragraph that you want to put into a chapter that's going to be a part of your book, if it's anything, you'll enjoy it. And if it starts to feel like work, I think that's a natural part of it if you want for your job to be a writer. But at the same time, I think that the majority of the time should be happy, I guess, or at least where you're going to end up is going to make you happy. So,
yeah.
um, where did you come up with the plot for Malthus? I was always, as somebody who is a title guy, it's striking, and it tells a lot, and it also is like, I better read this because I want to find out some more about this title. So where did you come up with the plot for that?
So, started out, I wrote, so the book I wrote when I was in the hospital was actually not Malthus. It was a different book. And it was if I would add one more author to the list, when I was a kid, I read, before R.A. Salvatore, I read Brian Jakes. He wrote like the Redwall series. Have you ever heard of that
I
one?
have heard of that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, I loved that as a kid. And if you haven't heard of it, it's got like anthropomorphic mice and squirrels and stuff. They're kind of like the good guys, and then they're like rats and weasels and stuff are the bad guys. And they live in like a fantasy setting and have weapons and stuff and fight each other.
I
And
mean, I feel like rats and weasels are the enemies here, like in real reality too. But
yeah.
I had to put that in there. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I actually wanted to write like a YA book like that, and I wrote like a whole book, and I sent it off and got it edited. And it was, the feedback I got was, to work on making the characters more flawed so they're more believable and getting inside their heads more. So, for one, I realized that I wanted to write adult fantasy, not, YA fantasy, for one. And then two, um, I actually just started out with Malthus as a writing exercise, and I really wanted to work on flawed characters and get in their heads more. So it was kind of a weird combination, like two or three ideas merging together, where it was the flawed characters piece, and then I wanted to do a reverse of Batman and the Joker, where Batman is kind of the bad guy, or antagonist, and then the Joker's kind of like the good guy or main character. So Malthus is the Joker, and the Inquisitor, who's another central part of the story. The the, the story starts out with Malthus and the Inquisitor. I won't say anything more than that, but you can read in the description pretty much right where it starts out. So the Inquisitor is kind of like Batman to the extreme, like upholding the law, and necromancy is illegal and all that stuff. And then Malthus kind of operates outside the law and is not necessarily a bad guy, but he doesn't really follow the rules of society and the law. And I wanted to take a look at what that was like from a different perspective. And then I guess the last piece, for the plot, so that was mostly the characters, but then for the plot, is I always really liked the Western movie 310 to Yuma. And it's basically, about someone escorting, it's a Western movie, but it's about someone escorting like a dangerous prisoner to justice. And then they end up having to, kind of work together and stuff. So that was kind of where I got the idea of like a dangerous prisoner, a fort in the middle of nowhere, and kind of merged all those things together for Malthus. Oh, and then a sprinkle of Dungeons and Dragons too, because I'm a fantasy nerd.
The star.
Yeah.
I love that it kind of starts out, and it's in this, of course, in Grimdark fashion, just this miserable place that's hot and, you know, bad things are happening. It's like, I like that. You know?
Yeah.
But what would you give advice to somebody who would say, yeah, I think I want to be a self-published author. That's where I'm heading right now. If that's the decision I'm making today, what advice would you give them?
So, man, there's so much out there, and I feel like I have learned so much since I started. And I'm actually thinking about writing like a short little book on self-publishing because there really is so much out there. But so one thing I was thinking about, because I mentioned Royal Road earlier, was that really helped me in trying to build an audience. That's something that's important that you have to do as a self-published author. But at the same time, just as a kind of warning for everybody out there, if you do publish your work, any of your work online, like on Royal Road or anything like that, and you want to publish that later, you will have to self-publish that. Like any agent or traditional publisher is not going to take your work if it's been published online before, especially if it's using the same title and everything. But even if you
normal, you wouldn't think about that as somebody who hasn't experienced that. That's a great point. Wow, I would have never thought about that.
Yeah, because originally when I started writing Malfus, like I said, it was just kind of a writing exercise, and I wanted to start attracting readers. So I started on Royal Road, and then once it like took off, I was like, okay, I want to publish this. But then I, realized, okay, well, there's no way I can do this. So I have to go the route of self-publishing. And I lucked out with the audiobook deal because I still can get, you still can do an audiobook, but a traditional publisher is not going to publish you. And they're definitely not going to publish you if they don't have the audio rights as well.
Yeah, it always kind of ends up like going back, no matter how like pure your intentions are, how inspirational or passionate you might be about a subject. It's like there's those fine prints that always kind of like slap you in the face and say, you're living in America right now, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. So so my advice is you have to start attracting people, and all the social media platforms out there. I know most authors like myself are introverts. We don't want to go out there and do those things, but I can't remember how many millions of books are going to be published this year, and all of those authors that are doing it, not all of them, but a vast majority of them are on social media platforms, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, whatever else, doing these things. So if you aren't, they're already another step ahead of you.
Absolutely.
So you have to do that, build up a newsletter. And then I used Reedsy to find some of the people to help edit my book and design the book cover. And Reedsy is a website that is kind of like eBay/Amazon for authors, where you can find editors, you can find proofreaders, cover designers, and you can really find some great people on there. Like the editor that I worked with, John Oliver, he has worked with Brandon Sanderson before. He's worked with Dan Abnett, one of my favorite authors. And then it's kind of funny when I was talking to him about my, I had like a video interview with him after my book edits came back and everything. And then he just casually mentioned being on like a live panel with George R.R. Martin before. And, so I mean, some of these people on here are really,
that guy.
Yeah, some of the people on there are definitely heavy hitters. My cover designer too, he's worked with his name's Alejandro Colucci, and he's worked with Anne Rice and Joe Abercrombie. He's even designed some of the Witcher covers, so he's awesome.
That's so awesome, dude. So kind of maybe a little bit starstruck in like a distant kind of way I would have been. I guess how I would have felt is like also intimidated. It's like,
Yeah.
so you've seen like who people spend hour after hour after hour talking about in the same genre that I'm getting ready to publish in, and but that has to be a test that you pass and feel good about yourself, talking to this guy and being open and vulnerable. So that's awesome, man. I really respect that.
Well, it was really cool too, because I mean, going through Readsy, for one, it lets you kind of vet people and see their reviews and everything, and then their past history and all that. But yeah, I mean, both these guys are, super professional people, and the prices that they charged were, not much higher really than kind of market price for a lot of that stuff. And they treated my book, just like they would a serious book like any of the other ones I mentioned. The cover designer made a few changes that I requested, and all of them were really great to work with.
That's amazing, man. So we've heard about the independent publishing advice that you give. What about just writing in general? Because I mean, I feel like that's probably the main character in this story we're telling with this question.
Yeah, so for one of my favorite books on writing, and I wish I had it for book one, but I'm glad that I found it before I'm really diving into book two, is this book called Story Genius by Lisa Cron, or Cron, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. But that is a really good book and helps you even kind of, so basically it focuses on the character as the central point of any story. And whether you're writing fantasy, science fiction, or literary fiction, whatever it is, you could use this book, you could learn from it, and actually has actionable things, as you're working on your outline to make sure that you're including the right parts of character in your writing. And so to me, there are three main parts of story, especially with fantasy. But I mean, really, you could use these, again, like I said, across any type of writing. But there's character, there's plot, and then there's setting or world building. And all of those have to work in balance. But at the same time, I feel like you as a writer definitely have to prioritize them yourselves. And, whatever kind of writer you are is which one you're going to prioritize. Like if you look at Brandon Sanderson, he probably leads more with world building than as much as kind of character and plot. And then if you look at Joe Abercrombie, I think he is a very much more forward with character driven stories. And to me, I think character driven stories are really what sell, or not, not even sell. That's the wrong word, but what people want to read, because I think I went to school for psychology I'm a, big psychology nerd too. And so I think at the heart of it, what we as humans want to do is read about another experience. And, we want to watch this character or this person struggle and understand the world through their perspective, even if it's, actually, especially if it's different from our own perspective, because then we want to, kind of be like, why would they do this? And think about it, at a subconscious level, like we're looking for behavior modeling, kind of, psychology nerd here. So yeah, so we're always looking at behavior and learning from other people's behavior, whether it's life around us or in a story. So I think being attracted to characters and their point of view and their perspective and their internal dialogue and thoughts, and not just that, but like not just how a situation happens, but how they react to a situation, how they think about it and perceive it. Like that's to me the most important thing. And that's what Lisa Cron highlights in her book. And, one thing I actually see a lot of writers I feel like mess up on is being attracted and like over attached with the world building aspect. Like that's definitely an important part of the story. But I feel like there are so many writers out there who are almost writing like encyclopedias, Wikipedias for, the lore and the world and all that stuff that they're putting their characters in, which is great. But at the end of the day, if you do that too much, you're going to want to info dump all of that in the story. And you really just want those things to kind of come across in, breadcrumbs a little bit to keep people interested in the setting that the characters are in without being inundated by it.
Absolutely.
So to me, I think that it is, learning characters, learning how to write characters, and putting your interesting setting in there, in the background, and leading people with your characters through that.
I love that, man. That kind of gives me a mirror into what your thought process is and the viewers too. So this part I've been really anxious to get out there because I was actually just recently sent the audiobook, and I can't believe how impressed I was. I don't know what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting something that wasn't impressive, but I'll tell you, you're the guy that did your audiobook. What was talk about that? Who did it, and where can they buy that?
Yeah, so that was really cool. Like I said, I posted my writing on Royal Road, and it was kind of the whole thing's kind of a funny story. So I have a writing website, and I get this email, and it goes to like my junk mail, and it's it says senior acquisitions editor from Tantor Audio, and he said he was interested in buying the audio rights to Malfus. And that's probably another piece of advice I have for indie writers is there are so many people that are going to take advantage of you. You have to be careful. Like there's so many scams out there, so many people saying they'll promote your book and charge you and all this stuff and just take advantage of you. So I saw this, and it went to my junk mail, and I was like, that's probably fake. And I didn't even answer it for like 2 or 3 days. And then I kind of like reread it, and I'm like, wait a minute. I like looked up Tantor Audio, and I was like, wait, this is a serious company and everything. So
like, man, is this too good to be true? And if you're messing with me, man, that's gonna make me real sad, man.
Yeah.
Understand your thought process right there.
Seriously. And it was crazy too, because I mean, at that point I had only gotten like halfway done even writing Malthus. So like, then there was a lot of pressure to like make sure I finished strong and all that stuff. But anyways, I'm getting off on a little too much of a tangent, but so the guy who reached out to me was really cool, and he was like, yeah, we definitely want to turn it into an audiobook, and whenever you finish it, that's fine. And so I ended up finishing the book like almost 8 months later, more if you count editing and all that other stuff's probably about a year after the first time I talked to him, maybe longer. And then I finally had the proofread version to send them. And then they like recorded like 2 or 3 people reading like the first, couple pages. And then I got to like pick one.
Oh,
and
so
then
you actually got to like sample some voices.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Man. See, that's a whole nother part of it that you don't think of, because me and my wife are always talking about the what ifs, and because it's new to our life, the whole book loving writing aspect, and it's been a refreshing kind of thing in our life. But we always talk about certain, like, do you get 2 or 3 different people that you can choose and they all do it, and you can choose like when you buy it, or do you get a handful of people that you get to choose just one? And so that was a question of mine. That's awesome.
So you're only getting like they'll record a little bit, and then I actually asked. So I picked one guy, and then I actually asked him to I had to go through like I don't know how many emails went to different people. Like I wasn't talking to the guy directly, but I was talking to the audio company. I was like, can you have him record this part instead? Because I really liked what I heard, but I wanted to hear a part that had more characters talking with more dialogue. So I wanted to hear how he would do with, some of the different characters in there. And then I heard that second part, and I was still like, oh yeah, this is really good. So his name was Osorio, and is, pretty crazy too, like looking this guy up. Like he had several other audiobooks under his belt, but he's actually on IMDb, and he's had like some roles on True Detective and NCIS and stuff like that. And then, so this is crazy too. I haven't asked him, but I swear I saw, like, after I looked him up on IMDb.
He looks familiar, bro. I feel.
Yeah. Well, then I was actually on Facebook, and there was this like commercial or Facebook ad for like this like skull kind of like shaver thing, and I swear he was in it. I'm not sure if it was him or not, but
you might have to drop him a line and say, "Hey man, you're trying to sneak a a job you done past me? Because I swear I know you.
Yeah, but yeah, so he recorded it, and man, he did an amazing job. Like, not only on the different voices for the characters, he made them distinct but not distracting. But in addition to that, like, even just the narration, like, he emphasized the right spots with the right emotions. He paused in the right spots. And when I actually got to, so even having listened to the different pieces of recording, when I actually got to listen to the whole audiobook when it came out, when my book launched on June 28th, I got to listen to the audiobook like, when that came out, and man, it was amazing. Like, he did such a good job on the voices, and it was way better than I was expecting. Stephen Pacey's still my favorite narrator with Joe Abercrombie, but Lee Osorio is definitely my second now.
That's awesome. Sorry, guys, I had to fix something real quick with the sound. All right, so would you repeat his name one last time for us?
Yeah, Lee Osorio, and it's spelled Osorio, his last name.
Awesome. I wanted to put an emphasize on his name because after learning who he was, I looked him up, and like you said, he looks like a guy that I've seen in a bunch of different stuff. And I think you said NCIS he was on.
Yeah, that and True Detective, and I guess he does some stage and play acting too.
Well, me and my wife definitely binged NCIS, so that has to be it for me personally.
Yeah.
So, where can my viewers buy your book? Let's go over the different places you have available and the editions that you've got available.
Okay, so I have my book available on ebook, audiobook, paperback, and hardcover. So all of those are available on Amazon. The audiobook is available on Amazon and audiobooks.com. And now between now and I think August 1st, on audiobooks.com, the audiobook's actually half off. And then the paperback and hardcover, you can buy on Amazon, but you can also go to my website and get the hardcover and paperback directly from me. I was able to keep the same price for the hardcover as Amazon. The paperback is $5 more coming from me, but those will both be signed copies. And then I'm also, as you can kind of see back here, I'm working on some sprayed edges for my book.
If you
I
guys
got
haven't
some.
seen those, by the way, his TikTok videos of doing it and the end results are pretty amazing. And I'm sorry I wanted to get in here too. I had a couple technical difficulties starting this. I had all my links posted. I will post those links when the video's done and it's recorded and I upload it onto YouTube. So you'll have all these links he's talking about. And just a real quick snapshot of that beautiful son of a gun.
Yeah, that
It's an
cover.
impressive cover,
Awesome.
guys. It feels good. The pages feel good. Like anybody who knows what I'm talking about knows. If you read a book and it's got great content, there's definitely an off-putting. I guess for me, I can be off-put by a book if the pages don't feel well or it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. This hits all those check marks for me, guys. So sorry. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, so it's the sprayed edge ones I'm still working on. I'm actually completely figuring out how to do that on my own, and have made some good progress, but they're not quite ready yet. But I will have them on my Shopify site soon, and have so far those different colors, but we'll see which ones I end up with there.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'll have those links posted, guys. And I'm going to ask just a little quick question that I thought up just right before we came on. And I'm just going to spring it on you. How did you like dressing up and going to them conventions, man? Because it was impressive watching the videos you made. I think that
Yeah.
was super fun, dude. Like, kind of like getting in character. I've never done that. Like, getting in character, kind of, especially your own character. I mean,
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. I went to Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio, and that's like a Dungeons and Dragons like board game kind of role playing convention they have every year in Columbus. And so that's definitely the target market for my book, which, the tagline I kind of say when people ask me what it's like or what it's about is Dungeons and Dragons meets Quentin Tarantino is kind of, like what reading my book is like.
That's
So,
absolutely accurate. So yeah, whatever you expect out of that explanation that Casey just gave, you won't be disappointed if you look forward to that.
yeah. So we went to Origins because that's definitely my target market there. And I dressed up as Malfus. I actually have this little rod I had there, and
Nice, man. The
dressed
orb.
up as Malthus, and I have here we go. I had some bookmarks. So this is also some self-published author advice. Like, you really have to think outside the box, and do after you finish your book, you think this is the hard part. Writing, it's the hard part, but really once you finish it, get it edited, and have to figure out how to get it out there to people on your own, that's the hard part. So
And us fantasy nerds, dude, maps. I'm sorry if I
yeah.
can't get that in view, but hey, if I'm sorry, that's not a good visual, guys. But
Let me
maybe
see
he's got a better angle. My mic's in
if I
my
can
way.
help you out here.
The map's great. The illustrations are great,
There
and
we
if you
go.
get the hardcover, they come color. Yeah, dude.
So I
Osorio.
won't show off. I'll just show the first illustration because this is kind of right where the story starts. So it only spoil it once you get to page 1. But
Oh, he's chained
there's
up,
the
man.
first illustration from the book there, and there's 10 illustrations in there. And actually, let me shout out to my artist friend Dejan Delish. He's awesome. He's an artist actually in Serbia, and I started working with him on the illustrations for my book. So that's kind of a cool story too. So actually, I saw a Facebook page that had some really awesome Joe Abercrombie art. I think it had one of my favorite characters, which is after the first trilogy and Best Served Cold, Monza, that he drew. And man, the artwork was so awesome. So I followed his Facebook page and saw that he had a lot of other Joe Abercrombie fan art that he did. And,
I'll tell
he's
you,
done every.
that's out of all the sorry, I had to comment on that because out of all the fan art that I've seen, what a lucky dude, man. Like, he gets such good fan art, man. Like, I'm sure there's a bunch I haven't seen from other people, but he gets such
Yeah.
good fan art. What a good example to use for sure.
Yeah, and Dijon does like a lot, like everything from Abercrombie does Mistborn, Malazan, like Gideon the Ninth. So some of your favorite fantasy series, he's probably done artwork for.
So I
And
definitely want to make sure that I get his name, and I'll put that link and give him
okay,
credit also.
yeah,
Because
for
the man
sure.
should be recognized.
He's awesome. He's really cool to work with. I actually just reached out to him. I was like, hey, I like your Joe Abercrombie art. Would you be willing to do some artwork for me? And paid him for what he did and everything. I did 10 different illustrations for me, and one of them is really cool. I can't tell you, guys, what it is, but it's a like center fold 2-page in the back of like one of the final finale pieces. So once
That's
you get
so
to that
cool.
part, you'll really appreciate his artwork. He's done
To
some really
those who
awesome
just kind
pieces in
of
there.
came in, I'm 3/4 of the way done. I have 3 kids and I got one on the way, so the wife's pregnant. So reading comes in when it can. So I will finish that probably tonight or the next day, but I can't wait to get to what he just said.
Awesome.
Whatever I've read so far is outstanding to those who have came in late, and he describes it as Quentin Tarantino meets.
Dungeons and Dragons.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys. Oh, the cat. Hey.
My cat.
That was a beautiful
Surprised
cat.
I forgot she was back there.
Well, she was tuning out just as soon as we were, because I really appreciate Casey being here with me, and just from talking with him over the last month or so, there's not a better guy that you could support in this adventure he's on as an indie author. Good content, great book as far as looks, content, feel, pages, all that, pictures, illustrations, maps, and I just appreciate you being on my channel, Casey, and this won't be our last one, okay?
Definitely. Thanks, man. Hey, I do have one more shout out though.
Absolutely.
So this is also a great idea for other self-published authors getting, an idea to start out. But I actually have a prequel short story called Greedy as a Ghoul, and that's on Amazon, and it's completely free. I made it, completely free for anybody who wants to check it out. So yeah, check out Greedy as a Ghoul. It's a prequel short story. It's also a great idea for authors. You can get people attracted to your work. Yeah, check out Greedy as a Ghoul and check out Malfus Necromancer Unchained. It made #1 new release in military fantasy on
How
Amazon
many
when it
awards
came
did
out.
the Greedy as a Ghoul get?
Man, yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Greedy as a Ghoul got 5 different awards. I think a big part of it was from Dijon's artwork I had in there, included in the short story. And I just found out Malthus a couple of days ago got an award. It got #1 in dark fantasy in the Firebird Book Awards.
That is incredible. I'm so happy for you, man.
Thank
Well,
you.
I appreciate everybody tuning in to my channel, Bearded Darkness Book Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay imaginative. Thanks again, Casey.
See ya. Have a good one. Bye.